Hey guys, so I went to see the first Omen yesterday, and I actually filmed a review, scrapped it, and slept on it. I had a lot of time on the ride back to kind of like think about it and mull over the details in my head, and I'm happy that I held off on doing this video. I'm also grateful for the fact that I heard many favorable reviews about this film before I went to see it, because I feel like I went there with like a little bit more of a clear head. If I went in there expecting it to be what the trailer made it look like, which is just like another generic crappy, like throwaway kind of Satan movie, I would have been blown away. I would have been like, oh my God, this movie was so scary. And let's be clear, it was. It really was able to capture that sort of feeling of the dread that the first Omen had. It was a very well-made movie. That being said, it doesn't really follow the story of the first Omen. And I am kind of a stickler for things like that. If you see my review from season 7 on the Omen 3, The Final Conflict, I had the exact same beef. And there are a lot of people who love that movie. There are certain things about it that are cool. Sam Neill was a very inspired choice to play Damien, I think. But the fact that they gave the 7 daggers to like individual priests who tried to make like individual assassination attempts on Damien, not on holy ground, it's just sort of like, this doesn't follow the story at all. Bugenhagen strictly says that he needs to be laid out on an altar of God. The first dagger extinguishes his physical evil, and then the other 6, like his external evils or his influence over the world or whatnot. And they just kind of threw it out the window. Kind of the same vibes with this movie. Don't get me wrong, the first Omen, in my opinion, is a vastly better made movie and a vastly scarier movie than the Omen 3, The Final Conflict, but there are things that don't really tie in with the movie. I mean, it was literally to the point where, like, at first I thought that it was just sort of a reimagining, sort of like, you know, Rise of the Planet of the Apes or some shit, like where it wasn't supposed to necessarily have any direct connection to the original film. It's still the same, like, story, but Damien's origins might be a little different. But then they do something to basically 100% confirm that this is a prequel to the 1976 film. And that was the point where I was sort of like, not that it ruined the movie for me, but I was kind of like, shit, I kind of wish they didn't give it that direct a connection, because then you could kind of like speculate or whatnot. I mean, first of all, you got Father Brennan. All right, the crazed priest who finds Mr. Thorne in the first one is played by the guy who plays the dad in The Witch, okay? And he does a great job. He puts on like an Irish accent to give him the fedora. His hair is like black. It's like the same style and kind of disheveled a little bit. I mean, he's perfect. But the thing is, his character is a good guy in this movie. I mean, everything that you basically get from the first Omen, he's culpable and he's contrite. You know, he's basically like saying, Mr. Thorne, I'm trying to save you so that Christ will save me. It just comes across as though he is personally guilty in this situation. I mean, even when Jennings and Robert Thorne go to his old apartment or whatever, it's got like pages of the Bible all over the walls. And he says, I'd say he was trying to keep something out, wouldn't you? So it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't have any protection from God or anything like that, because again, he didn't really do anything wrong in this movie. That's about as far as I can get into this right now, all right? So I am going to get into spoilers, but just for those of you who have not seen it yet, it is bound to be vastly better than you expected. It is a million times better than the trailers make it out to be. It is scary. I mean, it is scary. It's also pretty graphic, too. There's some really gross scenes in this movie that are just awesome. The lead actress, I've forgotten her name, but I will put it down below. She was freaking fantastic in this movie. I mean, like, I agree with Chris Stuckman, awards worthy, but she will never get an award for it because, you know, the Academy, they're a bunch of snobs. We all know that. Anyways, if you are a real stickler for detail, if you like really want to see a movie that flows into the first Omen flawlessly, you might be a little bit disappointed on that end. So I will leave you with that. All right. But I am going to get into spoilers now. So 3, 2, 1. So Father Brennan says in the movie, in the original Omen, I witnessed its birth, I saw its mother, and its mother was a jackal. None of that happens in this movie. Father Brennan is, you know, basically like trying to help her. He explains that there's like 2 churches, okay? There's the, you know, the good church that we all know and love, and then there's the evil, well, it's not an evil church. I mean, it is evil, but what they're trying to do is, because of all the protests and like the rising secularism in the world, they're trying to scare people into going back to church. So they're trying to bring about the birth of the Antichrist, which I actually think is kind of a little bit of a corny concept. I mean, the movie and the execution is so like good that I'm, you tend to overlook it, but it is sort of like, what? You're gonna bring about the Antichrist so people go back to church and then everybody's gonna die? What? I don't know. That's a little hokey to me. But anyways, I digress. I like a little bit of cheese on my movies sometimes, so I can get away with that. There's also like a death in this movie, by the way, that did not have the effect that I think it was looking for, because I had to suppress laughter. Basically, when the dude gets hit by the car and the nun is like holding him, and then she like moves and she's standing there with his upper half, I'm like, because it's just like, what did you think was going to happen? Why would you move with him? Plus, just the imagery, it looked funny. It looked like a cartoon, it didn't look like she was carrying any of the weight. It looked like it was just like, I don't know. I thought it was funny. I'm a sick bastard. But yeah, Father Brennan is doing everything to prevent this the whole time. When they find out that the woman, not the jackal, there is a jackal in it, and I think they were a little fuzzy on the details. I believe that all of these women that had the 666 were like born of said jackal, because they had like all these like baby births that went horribly wrong and shit like that. And I think that those were scrapped attempts at them bringing forth the Antichrist via a jackal. But they weren't bringing forth the Antichrist. They were bringing forth a human woman who had enough devil DNA in her, I guess, to have the Antichrist. It just seems like an unnecessary step. And they really kind of did it to do the cliche thing where it's like, the woman is pregnant with the devil's baby. Like, I think it would have been freaky if they had gone full-blown jackal birth at the end of the movie. So that was weird. Everything that Father Brennan tells Mr. Thorne in the first Omen basically doesn't happen in this movie. But they directly reference Robert Thorne at the end of the movie. You even see a picture of Gregory Peck in like this file when they say that he's the American ambassador that they're gonna switch out the baby with. And it's just like, I feel like that point, that little detail is what like kind of ruins shit in the movie. Because again, it's like, otherwise I could have looked at it as sort of like its own reimagining or whatnot. It really kind of didn't follow the story, and it was a little bit, I would say, more convoluted than it needed to be. It sounds like I'm shitting on this movie. Like, I have to say, like, really, like, the way this movie was crafted, it was scary. It is absolutely, like, it has my recommendation for you to go out and see it, okay? It was a scary movie, and not in like a jump scary way. There were a couple jump scares in like the first half, but it had that sense of dread and like hopelessness that the first Omen had, all right, which is a difficult kind of thing to obtain. I mean, this filmmaker is very good. It's just that like little detail in the end. Like, I think the idea is supposed to be you can watch this movie and then watch the original Omen right after it, and it'll all just make sense, and it just doesn't. But other than that, again, it's a very eerie experience. It is an above average, like, scary horror film. I was sitting in the theater at many points thinking to myself, like, where the hell did this come from? Maybe it's just because 2023 was such a crappy year, we needed something, but I don't know. Anyways, guys, the first Omen, it does have my recommendation. It is a scary movie. Like I said, if you're a stickler for details, it might bother you a little bit, but it's still very much worth watching, and I think it will stand the test of time. Either way, thank you for coming here, and that's all she wrote.